To present now. My entire screen. Yep. Great. And there we have like a strange meta experience with Corvin. All right, so I should be able to switch over to my images here. There we go. So Gary and I have been working on the file manager and really just approaching it as the beginning of kind of some design revisions with the idea of incorporating that into version 9. And so we don't want to rethink the entire dashboard experience. I think a lot of it works great, but there's definitely some room for polish and kind of cleaning things up a bit and just making it easier to understand and a little bit more modern feeling. We did a kind of a focus group survey around file manager issues that we went over in one of these town halls earlier, and there's a spreadsheet out there that's you can take the link up to of all the results that we got. They were pretty predictable. The number one piece of feedback was the paging interface is lackluster. That finding paging options under advanced search was awful. Like that was by far the number one feedback, is we miss our paging. There are a bunch of other kind of smaller concerns. One that has shown up as we've watched people use the file manager pretty consistently as well is having all of the functions that you can do to a file available wherever you might link to a file is a little confusing and overwhelming and leads people to accidentally do things that they don't want to do. The most obvious of which is hitting replace, because replace sounds like you're replacing a file on a file block, and in fact what you're doing is swapping out the image that's associated with that file record, and then all of a sudden your site's doing really weird stuff and you're like, this is confusing, I don't like this system. So definitely from our perspective, getting into that realm of, okay, like there's a lot going on in the file manager and maybe we need to show a little bit less of it and build in a little bit more of a helpful experience so people kind of get to what they need to without being overwhelmed by what they don't. What else? I'm trying to remember from that feedback. Moving around between folders would be nice to have some more powerful tools to do that. So what we've got here is, and again, none of this is final, but what we've got here, whoop, am I still good? Oh, okay, we're just admitting people.
Yep, you're good.
Heard a weird beep. There's a new kind of cleaned up file manager. So we're looking at, I'm already in the dashboard and we're not worrying about the in context file manager at this point. We'll get back to that later. And so one thing that is kind of cool out of the box is there's this favorites panel over here where you could favorite folders, and that would slide in and out, and that would make it easier to do kind of big across tree movement stuff. If you're like several layers down over here and you want to move a file to several layers down over there, you could just favorite that folder and drag a file back and forth over there. And those could be user specific. So you could, you can start to kind of have things that actually make sense for your workflow. And that's nice. Another thing that's kind of cool here is we pulled advanced out of search and we moved the upload stuff away from that upper corner and just down to the bottom of the page. And we've got some more comps to see how that works when there's more files on the page. But I think doing a better job of kind of defining quadrants of the interface and not mixing functionality within those quadrants is going to be helpful. Right now, there's a fair amount of stuff that just kind of got like thrown up in there, and like it just doesn't belong. You shouldn't. Searching for existing files, making a new folder, and adding files from your local hard drive are all kind of right on top of each other, and separating those out a little bit would be helpful. Oops, that's not for you. If you click advanced search, you get an overlay and similar behavior where you add fields. Here we have the file manager without the advanced filter on it, or the favorites.
Is there a way to go full screen with the actual? I actually thought up until 10 seconds ago that the blue bar and the add to and the trash and the edit and create were a part of these.
Oh, this? No, that's my, let's see. Yeah, it does look like Windows. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can. What's slideshow all about? Hooyah! How about that?
Nice.
You like that?
Yeah,
Sweet.
that's much more.
Whoa, it's doing stuff on its own. Exciting. Okay, so we still have the overlay where you can do the incoming remote files and stuff. Oh my god, that's annoying. So it's gonna. I don't like this mode at all. It's gonna like automatically time through this stuff. Can I go full screen without? Like I don't want a slideshow. Good lord. Why is everything so complicated?
I didn't mean to derail you.
Thanks, Andy. Hold on a second. What if I do it just like? Nope, that's not going to like that. Okay,
Oh, well.
yeah.
So it
sorry.
doesn't include see all photos and
Nope.
add to. Gotcha.
It's not that. It starts down.
All
It starts right
sorry.
up here.
Try F11 if you got that.
No.
Nope.
I like
Forget
that.
about me.
That's nice.
Okay. All right, so here we are adding calendar widgets to an advanced search. I'm going to come back to this. So another thing that we thought would be cool was kind of having an accordion experience on the actual file record. So if I click this file, there's stuff that I want to see frequently that's like super handy, but I'd like to get to without having to go through too many clicks. That's the attributes, kind of where it's used, what the tracked URL is, and so we're pulling that stuff out so I can get to that really easily, and then trying to move away from modals and into. I can zoom in here, and then do I get to actually? Oh, come on! Hey, that's different. We having a detail file or detail page for the actual file record. So right now you don't really have that. Everything happens in modals on top of the file manager. And I think the big idea that's different here is saying, well, like every file, like there would be a URL I could go to, and that would be everything that I can do to that file in the file manager. And kind of taking the approach, and we were going to look at how to do this across all the dashboard, of making the interface more contextual and mixing the help content in with the UX more. And we do this a little bit in the dashboard now. We have we have some models for this. We did a style guide, I don't know, years ago when Robert was around, of like, this is how you would do a subtitle, but we haven't been very consistent with it, and a lot's changed. So we've been looking at tools like Zendesk, where you have pretty complicated interfaces around triggers and automation and stuff that in the past has been pretty intimidating for people. But because they kind of take the time to do an explanation as to what this button actually means and give things a little bit of room to breathe and not be worried about fitting everything above the fold, it doesn't feel so intimidating. So here's really everything that we do with files. Here's the statistics, where it's actually used, changing the storage, where it exists, kind of clumped together in a way that makes sense. We even got a version of advanced permissions. I don't know if we would do that or launch that. We could still launch some modals from here. And again, like this is all in progress, so we might move attributes up because they're more important than permissions and access and that kind of thing. But embracing the idea that, look, a file could have a whole bunch of stuff and we don't need it to be a whole bunch of windows on top of windows. It'd be better to have a destination page for it. How do I get out of this thing? There we go. So there's the little expandy guy. There we are back with upload. I feel like I've shown most of this stuff. Yeah, so I think that's basically where we're at with that right now. I'm going to put some of this stuff together into a document we've been working on that kind of details everything the file manager does today and all those modals, along with these new ideas, because there's clearly stuff that we just haven't got to yet. And we're going to stick that up in GitHub and start having a discussion around that. But there you go. Stop sharing my screen now. Start sharing my lovely face. So that's the progress that we've made on the file manager so far, and kind of direction that we're heading with it. So, yay. Let's see. What do we have in other news here? Mike and Corvin, I know we had talked a little bit about the training stuff. We haven't had a chance to really circle back internally, but I'm wondering if you guys have anything to, if you have any thoughts to share or questions that you want out of this group around doing weekly trainings.
Any kind of feedback that we could get for that would be great, definitely. We haven't had much of a chance to think about it with the holiday or two, but definitely any kind of feedback to get exactly what we're looking for on that. You know, one of the things that we've been thinking about, at least generally in our, you know, not together, is like what level of you know, training this is going to be at the low end and at the high end. And where it makes sense to kind of focus. And I think where we're landing on that is towards the lower end, trying to focus on some of the basics, like, you know, what is a block? Why is it there? How does it interact with things like areas? And you know, that sort of like low level barrier of entry kind of stuff, more so than some of the deeper, more technical stuff. But that's just really bare thinking and not too much real planning at this point. So.
That makes sense to me. Start at the beginning, work your way through, right? Like I think once you get a cadre of people who are eagerly showing up for your Friday morning seminars, then probably you'll get to a spot where it's like, now we're going to talk about this deep, awful, poorly documented part of Concrete 5 and save those videos. But yeah, probably want to start at the beginning.
Now, one thing we could do, there was a couple questions from John the Fish while you were showing that file manager, if we're okay with fielding some.
Oh, yeah, by all means.
One thing that John the Fish had asked, he mentioned that it might be cool to have the favorites also show file sets. Is that something that we had thought about?
We had not thought about it, but that does make sense. I think that, I don't know, maybe Andy disagrees with me, but I feel like file sets are around for the long haul. I don't feel like that's a scrapbooks versus stacks kind of problem. I feel like you need sets. Sets are labels, folders are folders. Like you need both. So it makes sense to be able to make it easy to put things in there. It's a good idea.
Yeah, and I mean, we also have this concept of saved searches as well. So I could see those. They currently appear like folders in the file manager as well. You obviously can't put stuff into them by dragging onto them, but in terms of having them easily available and present wherever you happen to be, I think it makes a lot of sense for those types of things to show up there as well.
Yes, I really like that idea. The other thing that John the Fish had mentioned, and I think I know the answer on this one, is where did we land on that tree view? We're thinking, what are we thinking on that?
We played with it a little bit in comping, and pretty quickly you get into doing a pretty significant I'm rebuilding all of the Windows file manager thing. So I think we kind of steered away from it because it felt like more than we needed. But and that's how we got to favorites. I've got comps of a tree kind of being in that favorites panel of like, oh, okay, here's the whole tree, and I can jump to it that way. So I can see getting there eventually, but we kind of backburnered it in the spirit of like, well, how can we make what we have now simpler and more elegant?
Nice. Those were the two from John. He also mentioned while you were answering that it might be cool to have the ability to turn a saved search into a file set. I think that's a really cool idea, but I think it might be a little bit beside this. I think what a good paradigm for that might be just having a bulk selector and add all these to a file set in that file search view. But I think that's a good thing to keep thinking about and to get added in with this set of features.
Yeah. Looks like there's another question. Can there be a spot for adding an alt attribute added through the images in File Manager? I'm not sure what that means. Like adding a new type of attribute or a new...
Well, I'm not sure exactly what Stephanie might mean on this. One thing that I assume is that, today when you add a file to the front end, you have the ability to add different kinds of attributes to that file, like style and alt tags and other kinds of attributes to that file. My understanding, I thought that the way that worked today is that alt tag automatically is powered by the title of the file.
That is the case. Yeah.
It sounds like, Stephanie, can you correct me if I'm wrong? It sounds like what you're asking for is maybe a dedicated spot in the file upload that allows you to set something like that. Is that right?
for like overriding. So if you, yeah, kind of the way we do with the meta description for pages.
And I know we've run into this pain a little bit ourselves in the past, where titles aren't quite the same thing as alt tags. And really, with alt tags, it's for accessibility. It's for SEO, but it's really for accessibility. And those should be as descriptive as possible, and not quite. They're not when you're describing what an image is to somebody who might be sight impaired. It's not really the same thing as the title is of the image. So I can see that.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think especially if we build it the same way we did for pages, where there's an alt attribute, but if it's not populated, we try to use the meta, like that we use the name or whatever, so you don't make it so there's extra work that is involved. It's just an override if you want it. Nice.
Cool.
There you go. What else is here? We can talk about this email issue if you want.
Sure.
Sounds awesome. So there's some challenges. People have had some challenges getting emails from concrete5.org. Although the one I looked into personally, it had just been blocked by SendGrid, and it was another one of those. Oh, you gotta. We have to whitelist that in SendGrid. And then wasn't there something with when we changed our SPF filter when we moved to AWS, and so maybe there's some trickle effects out of that.
I honestly don't recall. I do remember that the one issue that someone contacted us over, it did turn out to be they were denying delivery to that domain. So it wasn't, I don't believe it was a systemic issue. It was just we just had to clear out that bounce record from SendGrid. But I don't know if there's anything more that's systemic that's going on in there right now. If there is, maybe whoever. Is this on an agenda that someone raised?
Yeah, I think Mike put it on the agenda.
Okay.
Maybe he knows something.
Gotcha.
But maybe he doesn't. That's possible too. Great. Well, emails are going out. Super. Problem solved. Love it. Let's see what else is going on. We've been doing some interesting analysis of. Oh, Corbin's talking to someone. Yep. All right. We're moving on from email? Do we care? Is this a Slack conversation or is this a town hall?
Let's move on.
Okay, that's good. One thing that was interesting that we've been kind of scratching our heads over. Wow, I was literally scratching my head over it right there. Is looking at the audience for Concrete 5 and who is using it to build what, kind of currently versus historically as well. And I know there's a forum thread in the leaders.
It wasn't that when I was doing it. No, it's weird. It's still might be mute settings. I think it's just an on off because you have it turned off.